Hello there, Jimjamatic here. Long time no here. I'm back again. Not doing a Heat of Robot Wars. I'm very sorry, that person on Twitter who's constantly asking me to do Heat D. I will get round to it in next year. But until then, we're talking about a subject that I've not really talked about before on my channel, is Battlebots, only because I just started watching Battlebots last year. I know, I'm a heathen. Well, watching it more regularly. And we're talking about the Newcomers, but I'm not alone. I am joined by three beautiful guest stars here. First is the Robot Wars guru, Anton9132.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to be back.
Yeah, glad to be back. It's been a while. There we go.
Yeah. Short and to the point. I can't blame anymore. Part of Team Mott and Melee, and also part of ESC, it is Oliver Stapely.
Hello, yeah, this is my first time on this channel. I'm looking forward to this.
What a debut, eh? You know, back on back with now I've actually got software to edit with. It's always good to have. I'm no longer a Windows Movie Maker person, so that's good.
Oh, that's sad. I'm almost kind of sad. I like Movie Maker.
It's the end of an era, but the new one has begun.
That and Flash Player.
And last but not least, he has his Lego creations, of course. It is David of Smeg.
How did I get here?
I don't know. I just teleported you here, and I guess you're just...
I was just having a nap, and then just suddenly I'm on a call.
Abduction and bribery are the usual ways he does it.
It's a dream.
Are we going back to
Oh god, it's the reoccurring nightmare again.
Are we going back to the old ways where I'm just kidnapping my guests now? That used to be a thing for like a few years. I had people in the basement, even though I don't have a basement. But
it's a lot easier just to ask people to come on, isn't it?
It is, really. I mean, why ask for things like, permission when I can just bring them in anyway? I hope I don't get quoted on that anytime soon. But anyway, yes, we are talking about...
Jimjamatic is suddenly cancelled.
Unfortunately, I think considering some of the robots today, I'm probably going to get cancelled like 2 or 3 times, honestly. But that's...
Some people in this community have heavyweight robots. James actually just has like heavies, just people to go around and beat up people to bring on his podcast.
Oh, I love my own little posse to do that. That would be something.
You need a few of them to pick my fat ass up and drag it along. I know that much for a fact.
But yes, we're here to talk about the Newcomers of Battlebots. I guess also some of these are also teams, like for example Fusion is obviously part of Team Y actually, but these are the first time this robot has appeared. We're talking about these kind of robots. We're not talking about robots that have like changed a lot, like of course Gamma 9's but a little different, Ghost Raptor's basically as rubbish it was before, Chomp's completely different. So they're a separate kind of category. We're talking about original robots / new robots from a familiar team. There's 22, and only 6 of them made it into the top 32. So we've got a great list of robots to go through here, which we do have a positive to say about them all. I've randomised them all, not in alphabetical order, that's boring. Let us begin with a robot that did make it into top 32 to begin with. It is, it has perfect in its name, maybe for a good reason, I don't know. It's Perfect Phoenix is our first robot we're talking about. Now this is...
See, you say that we're talking about new robots, but then the first robot we talk about is not a new robot.
Yes.
It's arguably one of the oldest robots in taking part.
Yes.
You have to be brutally honest about it.
Oh,
In this situation.
I see what you did there.
I didn't realise I needed the
brutality, guys. God, I'm so funny.
I didn't realise I needed the spreadsheet for using people on Among Us tonight.
Yes, Perfect Phoenix.
You. I'm not playing tonight, so screw you.
Yes, Perfect Phoenix was brutality, and as the BattleBots website loves to have as a fun fact, is that it's older than the driver itself. Tyler the Wen, I think that's how you say the name. I'm not the best at pronouncing the one, but
even Oliver's older than the driver. Come on, let's be honest now.
We're starting these GCSEs soon. But Perfect Phoenix, yeah, it's one of the robots that make it into the top 32. Admittedly, its path, its actual 2 victories were against Extinguisher and Atom 94. So, yeah, and also, I mean, I can't even call the Extinguisher fight a fight. they tapped each other, and extinguisher just sort of died, like really quickly. And then they also got their arses handed to them by Scorpios, admittedly. They are a lower-ish seed, but I will say Perfect Phoenix, in terms of designs, is very kind of, I guess, basic, but not in a bad way, I suppose. Like,
Basic but effective.
yeah, like it looks like I could build this thing in RE2 in about 10 minutes if I was, if I was really creative. But
I mean, it's from that era of robots before the revival of Battlebots in 2015, where there was, by and large, in terms of like American robots, a more sort of by the numbers, get the job done type approach to robot building, and you didn't necessarily need the showmanship for a TV show because classic Battlebots was an open competition, and modern Battlebots wasn't a thing yet.
Yep,
Yeah.
pretty much.
that is true.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the only issues I noticed quite a lot with Perfect Phoenix was it was more in the earlier, more in its fight against Scorpios, really, was that I know he's more used to driving more wedge robots. He has Captain Doom in the first series of Bulgabots, for example. You can have more fast wedged robots. They don't really have spinners on them, and one of the things you're supposed to do with the spinner is obviously to not keep the spinner going as you're hitting a robot, because you'll just burn stuff up, which is exactly what happens in their fight against Scorpios.
And Atom 94 probably as well.
It did happen,
be honest.
there. Although in Atom 94's fight, they actually he did show his driving, what he had to driving skill. Yeah, he had a good driving skill there, really. It became a pushing match. Admittedly, neither of them were very good at pushing. Because I don't know if it was grip or they just were equally matched, which is sad. Really. But I feel bad. 'Cause I don't. It's probably like the most middle ground of these robots. Like I don't despise Perfect Phoenix. I don't love it, but it's not a bad robot though.
No.
I would take it.
There.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it performs as well as it does for such an old robot, I think that is definitely worthy of some credit, because especially with a sport like Battlebots that evolves over time, and the window of evolution can either be really long or really small. More often than not, it's really small. The robots that do really well 2 or 3 series later are completely outclassed and outmatched. So the fact that it's still doing as reasonably well as it is, despite being such an old machine, one that hasn't actually been used a lot in recent years either, I think that's definitely worth some credit.
Yeah.
It's a testament to the engineering of Paul Ventimiglia initially, and his design, and more recently Ray Billings and the renovations that he's done to the robot. I mean, technically speaking, it is the only Paul Ventimiglia designed robot in this series, so technically they're the number one seed going in.
Even though they're currently C27.
That's a stretch and a half. There.
I mean, you would never guess that Ray Billings had anything whatsoever to do with this team. It's not like he's always there in the background like some kind of imaginary friend when Tyler's driving. He's always just
looming over.
He's like something like in America have the term soccer mom. He's like a soccer dad almost. Like just
I mean, on one of the episodes, they said that Ray was like a Sith Lord, so literally he's Darth Sidious, just lingering over Anakin, trying to finish the job.
That's
I
the
mean,
impression.
Ray is the soccer mum of the team, and Tyler's mum is literally on the team.
That is also true. Yes.
If there was one thing I could say about Perfect Phoenix that I wasn't a fan of, it's so boring. Look at it, it's bland.
It does need a better paint scheme, doesn't it?
It does. It's just black with a red.
I mean, it's
bar
got
on it.
Phoenix in the
Boring.
name. Paint a fucking Phoenix on it.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad when the most exciting it got was it went to a blue bar, not a red one.
Oh God! In the chat when we were watching that,
Yeah, there was a.
we got
couple.
far too excited over a blue bar.
It's like really low standards.
See, I kind of think like Tyler is a driver. I think different people come into to robot combat for different reasons. Some people come into it because they really enjoy the design aspect. Some people really enjoy the fabrication and the building. Some people really enjoy just going and watching for the spectacle. Some people enjoy the driving. And from what I can gather, Tyler is very much a driver. He literally runs a slightly modified D2 kit. So to be given the controls of a previously successful robot, I think it's just the kind of driver and roboteer that Tyler is, that he chooses a fairly featureless but somewhat effective instrument as his robot of choice, rather than going for showmanship or style or panache of any kind.
Yeah.
Are you saying, Oliver, that you wouldn't want to see a pair of googly eyes on the front of that?
Google Eyes make everything better. Let's be honest.
It is a fact.
Yeah. It's not a bad. I mean, the placing of 27th seed, I think, was pretty accurate, I would say. I mean, I might have dropped it maybe a little bit, to maybe 29 or 30, possibly, but given the fact that its caliber of its wins weren't as high. But at the same time, they're sort of in the same areas like Slammo, Hijinks, that's not a bad area to be in out of the top 32, so fair play to him, managed to get there. Yeah, exactly. I mean, getting 2 wins as well on the robot that's really old in this design is still pretty impressive. It's like
they're up against Endgame, though.
Yeah, I don't see them doing well against Endgame, unfortunately. I mean, Endgame has had 2 very quick KOs against 2 very experienced teams.
And you look at Perfect Phoenix's their match against Atom 94, horizontal. Yeah, what am I saying? A vertical spinner. There you go. Get your brain in order, Oliver. Right. Atom 94, vertical spinner. Another vertical spinner. Not of the same caliber as Endgame, and sort of broke in the first hit. But even that first hit against Atom 94, it sent Perfect Phoenix flying upwards and backwards. And against something that's a lot more resilient and durable, like Endgame, I don't see it even lasting the full 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting to see how they can even survive the fight, let alone win. To be brutally honest, pun intended.
Endgame are probably going to be aiming for that same corner where they keep yeeting Tombstone and Hypershock.
Right on top of the screws. Yeah, Perfect Phoenix, unfortunately I don't see it going further than the top 32, but the fact they got into top 32 is still, great for a first time competitor into Battlebots for, such an old robot as well. But fair play, and hopefully if they do come back, if there's a 2021, then I would like to see me to come back with a different design, maybe, or something that's more tailored towards Tyler than this robot in particular.
That's kind of the thing. Like, I don't know if they will come back, given that it is such an old design, and that the next series will be so competitive with all the teams that had to pull out of applications both times for the first round of applications and the second round of applications for this series. Unless Tyler goes away and completely redesigns it, does his own design and something that will suit his style better, I don't see it coming back in this form. But as I said before, I don't think Tyler is so much of a builder at the moment. It's something he could maybe become, but yeah, I think he's very much a driver, and if we see him again, it's probably more likely as part of another team, I think.
I could see that. So the second robot, which there's long robots. You have Jellyfish, you have Abaddon 11, and then you have Smee with an indeterminate amount of E's on this.
Say
robot.
It properly. Come on.
Smee. There we go. The long boy itself.
One and a two and a 1, 2, 3. Smee. Yeah, I was hoping everybody else joined in on this one.
No, we're just gonna let
you're on your own now.
Yeah, you started, so we'll let you finish. Smee is certainly one of the more unique robots of this season. I mean, you can't mistake it. Unlike Perfect Phoenix, which is, dare I say, a little bit more standard, this is very different. A spring-loaded, really long robot that kind of does a wrap-round robots and these little blades on either side. Essentially, 2 little tiny heavy, like really compact heavyweights stuck on a giant spring-loaded arm that attaches to each other. We unfortunately we didn't get to see that much of it being really effective, because unfortunately its first opponent was Sharko, who it just kind of wrapped around, and then it got the wheels a bit, and then it had Pain Train, which is one of those fights that I wish I hadn't watched, because for the first half was just nothing happening. And then their fight against P1 was actually pretty good, I would say. I mean, more so for P1's sake than for Smee's sake, but
Justice for P1.
they had a good Bounty Hunters fight against Mammoth, though. That was actually quite decent, I will say.
It was excellent. I think there have been two very different Smees this series. I've heard, probably the team have confirmed it somewhere, but I haven't seen for myself, that the first two matches were done on a slightly lower power setting or with a slightly different gear ratio or something like that. But either way, it seems pretty clear to me, because you watch everything from the P1 fight onwards, and Smee finally has torque and pushing power and traction, and it begins to be as effective as its Beetleweight little brother is.
Yeah, because in the first couple of fights especially, it was very slow to kind of wrap round things and stuff, and it didn't help against something like Pain Train, which is really tiny, that being slow and trying to wrap around it ended up sort of being kind of like a really boring pushing fight for half of it. But as soon as it got against P1, then a lot more entertaining.
Except the robot didn't have the torque and the pushing power there to actually push. It was just sort of hugging things, and that was about it.
But yeah, I do feel a bit bad for Smee. I mean, this is the robot again I'd like to see it definitely come back, because especially in the last couple of fights when they got their act together with how fast it was going and how much torque it had, I could see it being a lot more fun in fights.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it is their team's first heavyweight, and I really hope that they take the lessons that they've learned from trying to upscale their Beetle design this year and run with it, because I think, like you say, it's a really interesting design that has got a lot of potential.
One nice bit with Smee is on their weapon discs. Well, you can't see it. They actually have Smee cut into their disc and then balanced from that as well, which is a nice little extra.
Oh, really? I did not know that. That's actually pretty cool. I love that. I love those little attentions to detail that I would never have thought of, and someone told me. That's awesome. I will say though, as much as I love Smee, I wish this thing had been split in half. I'm sorry, it'd been funny to watch, like Tombstone break this thing in half. I feel really bad for saying that, but it was. I don't know. It's just one of those robots that seems to be begging to be broken.
Just swap Slapbox with it instead.
Yeah,
They haven't really fought a powerful vertical spinner this series. So I think if they come back next series with a improved robot and try and sort of prove themselves and establish themselves a little bit more, entirely possible that they will face a big vert, especially if they go far in the competition. And yeah, I think you'll be more likely to see it with something like Endgame or Death Roll or Bite Force trying to take a bite out of the middle of it.
yeah, because the only spinners they've been up against is Pain Train and Mammoth. One of which isn't very damaging dealing, and the other one loses its weapon when it taps the side of another robot.
I mean, I think it's fair to say.
Out here?
I was going to say, I think it's fair to say one of them isn't very damage dealing, and one of them isn't very damage dealing.
yeah, yeah, that's very true. And then unfortunately you got Sharko, which is bless it, it's trying. Sharko is trying. I love Sharko, but it was very sad.
The problem with that fight is both robots were the wrong shape for each other to get a hold of.
Yeah, it was very
I think-
awkward.
I think what could have made that fight more interesting, and I think as a whole would make Smee more effective, is of course they've added those undercutting spinners to give themselves an active weapon to be allowed onto Battlebots. The Beetle, as far as I know, is just a wide wedge. But something we saw in, I think it was their P1 fight when they got flipped over, is how much better those spinners are when the robots flipped upside down. They've just at a better height for hitting things.
It was the same.
So I would actually quite like to see Smee move the spinners from undercutters to sort of overhead spinners Still keep the wheels large enough for them to be invertible, but I think it would probably just do them a lot better because they could use the wedge to sort of funnel things into the spinners rather than trying to get glancing blows as they've kind of been doing this series.
Yeah.
Either that, or make the wedge solid and 3 or 4 vertical spinners in the wedge.
I like the
Go
wokeness of that.
works. Make 4 of them into one robot. You got a winner. Easy.
Or like if you split it in half, it just like divides like a cell, and you get 2 SMEs.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I say, it's a lot of fun. It's one of those ones that's really entertaining, but also it's one of the ones that also has potential to, really
flop.
do some damage. And it has potential to flop as well, as we discovered.
I mean, speaking of flopping over, one robot I think spent more times on its back than it did on its wheels. Is the moving fax machine itself with a spinner is Tracer. As obviously mentioned in the intro, they fell over twice in their matches. Once against Hijinks, which wasn't even aired; it was like a highlight fight, and the other was against Ribots. After very little pressure, the robot just flew over. And unfortunately, they did have a self-writer in their CAD, but due to the limited amount of time they had, they no longer have a self-writer. So that's probably why they couldn't get back onto their wheels again.
Reminds me a lot of Arenas of Destruction. You just drive into a robot and it just falls over. Reminds me a lot of that.
Yeah.
Just the physics was wrong,
Yeah, physics was wrong. And then it glitches and flies out the arena. That's RA2, sorry.
I mean, it's also unfortunate their only win was against Balespear. So, yeah, I mean, I like Balespear, I love the team, but it's not a very hard victory, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. They've not had a particularly good time of it. I know they made some modifications, Bounty Hunters, to try and work with what they had and make it a bit more effective. But I think the shape of the robot and all the gyro that they were getting from that disc just really didn't make it easy. And even the concept of Tracer, the idea of having the whole of that front of that robot hinged on one long axle, is something I haven't really been able to understand why that would be effective, or they've certainly not been able to show why that was their sort of main design choice. And it feels a bit odd to have a single point of failure in there for, as far as I can tell, little to no reason.
Yeah, and here's a fun fact I just realised while I was looking on the website. The total time of their 2 fights against Tracer and Hijinks was about a second longer than their entire fight against Balespear. So they didn't spend very long on their wheels in a lot of their fights, given the fact that 10 of those seconds is countdown. So that's not the greatest record in the world. Also,
Maybe they just need to redesign it so it's upside down to begin with, and then just work from there.
or just remember to put or just have more time to put the self-writer on next time, because I understand some of these issues obviously could be down to being rushed in because of the pandemic and stuff, and how especially teams like Axolotl had very little time to make their robot.
Yeah, this is the thing. Tracer wasn't supposed to take part in 2020 at all. They were aiming for 2021. But because of delays, it suddenly became available that they could try and push the robot into this series. And I don't know, maybe it's an example of maybe they should have just waited until next, this year.
It does show, unfortunately.
But I would rather a heavyweight version of their mini bot.
Yeah, Needle.
Yeah?
Their little
Needle,
mini
sorry.
bot. Yeah, that's kind of taken some of the building community by storm, in that I know Ben from Team Panic has built a version, Chris Sowry, the guy behind Claws 2, has built a version. The whole idea of this having really sort of small, light and not particularly torquey motors, being able to lift things 10 times their weight, I think has really inspired a lot of people to start building, and I think it's something we could see a lot more of in the future. I think it's the one redeeming thing with Tracer, and it's something that BattleBots as a global sport it does quite a lot in the sense of its designs that appear on the show start appearing in other competitions around the world. Sawblaze being a good example. That overhead sawbots have become fairly ubiquitous in different competitions over the world now. And I think Needle is another one of those things that I think will start to take off, and people will run with that idea that's been presented and do even greater and even more interesting things with it.
It's a very unique idea because I saw the video of it on on YouTube. Where it can lift how its unique lifting mechanism can lift up really heavy robots and stuff. And I'm just it's just a bit of a shame it wasn't utilised very often in the actual series itself. Probably because again Tracer didn't actually last very long, so they put in a chance to actually show off the robot as much, because by the time it was in there, it was over most of the time. But
yeah, I'm glad they brought us something memorable, even if it wasn't their main entry.
There's always some positive about everything. I mean, Tracer again isn't a bad robot. It just, I guess, the crunch time just left it without its only way of self-righting, unfortunately.
It's flawed, but it isn't necessarily bad.
Yeah, it's very, it's definitely above average for a lot of these robots, because a lot of these robots on this list have much more glaring flaws than that. But I still really like. I still like Tracer though. I don't despise it in any way. Then, of course, this is one of the favourites of Lloyd to talk about on here, is Danby's 2-in-1 robot, which unfortunately might get completely destroyed by Black Dragon. I hope not. It is Slammo, the suplex machine. I mean, I do like this design quite a lot, honestly. It's a Danby robot. There's going to be some kind of nice design to it. And it was very nice to see Danby actually get a win. Finally.
Finally.
It's well deserved.
It's
long overdue. Yep.
Indeed. I mean, I do love. Obviously, props goes to the little gnome as well. They have with them. That's the best mascot that's ever been put into BattleBots, aside from the copperhead snake fist. But no, I love this design purely because when it got to do its thing, when it got the lift on Pain Train and just threw it over, and it presumably did the same thing against War Easy, because we never saw that fight, unfortunately. That's a crime, isn't it? And Danby goes 2-0. We don't see the second fight. That's
conspiracies,
very conspiracy.
However, if you become a BattleBot supporter today,
brilliant plug.
That was very
sponsor us, BattleBots.
That was subtle. As I mentioned, it is going against Black Dragon next, which I'm worried. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit worried.
Yeah, I don't know.
It could pull off an upset.
It could happen. Black Dragon has not necessarily had the same form this year that it did last year. It's still a very respectable and very dangerous robot to be fighting, but I could see Slammo pulling off a win here. It's not likely, but the odds are weighted against him. But
I mean,
there is a chance.
He does have an advantage by the fact that he did fight Witch Doctor as their last fight, and I guess you can take some, learn from that fight, I guess, and hopefully try different tactics. Because I know in that fight he went for the two forks as opposed to the wedge on it, which it did work for a bit, and then unfortunately they got the wheels, and that's when it all went downhill.
Well, he had some kind of spade thing as the bottom bit, didn't he? To slide sort of in between the weapon, I think was the idea.
I believe so, yeah.
He's got configurations for vertical spinners. I think my favourite thing about Slammo is the way that the weapon works, because it's all done off of one motor that turns in the same direction the whole time.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the way that it's geared, the motor turns, and through the gearing it brings down those upper claws. Then when those claws hit the sort of the end of their sort of arc of travel, those sort of sets of gears stop moving, and that whole set of gears is on like another bigger gear that the whole sort of weapon system orbits around. It's really hard to explain without any kind of visual cues. But yeah, just trust me when I say it's one motor. The motor just goes in one direction, and it is able to bring the claws down and lift the wedge all in one movement.
Now here's the real thing. I would love to see this thing try and suplex Mammoth. Although Mammoth does it for it, in fairness. They just let themselves
I mean, that's
over.
a rematch from they've fought a couple of times when it was Foxtrot. So that would be a good one to see.
So that was Slammo. There's anything else we have to talk about Slammo? Well,
just pray for Craig, really, for Thursday.
pray for Danby.
Yep.
And then we're moving on to another robot, which actually, in some ways, has kind of almost a similar kind of weapon in some ways, but not the same, not exactly the same. It's Claw Viper, who I was very, very sad they didn't do as well as they did this year, because based off its first fight, I was like, okay, this thing's really good. And admittedly, it is hijinks, but that's not, it still did quite well against something like that. And then they got Black Dragon, and then they got Gigabyte. They had quite a tough second and third match, honestly, for a new team especially.
I think it's because they did so well against hijinks. They thought, all right, let's feed it some of the more experienced machines. And we saw what happened when that happened.
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, one positive I like about this thing is that I love how compact it is. This thing's tiny. It's like Tantrum levels of tiny.
Tank.
Yeah, it is like a little tank. Also, in its Bounty Hunters fight against, I believe it was Kraken. I believe was it Bounty Hunters fight, was it? I believe it was. I think it was Kraken.
I'm not sure. I haven't watched much of the Bounty Hunters, so I don't know.
Oh no, it was Kraken. So I remember I think it was Kraken because there was one bit where like they just used a little claw to just bonk them on the head.
Yeah, no, it was Kraken.
I thought it was. That was quite an entertaining fight as well. Because they've lifted up Kraken a few times, and like Kraken grabbed hold of them quite a few times as well. I see a lot of potential in Claw Viper. Don't know what everyone else thinks about Claw Viper, but I quite like it.
I think it's been, I don't know, it's been an interesting one. It's showed a lot of durability against hijinks, and then has still kind of showed itself to be fairly durable throughout the rest of the series with, the Black Dragon and Gigabyte matches, but the weapon hasn't necessarily survived the full fight, and it was a design when I first saw it that I was maybe like, oh, I'm not so sure. This isn't quite as good as something like Slammo, or doesn't look quite as clean as something like Deadlift. But it slowly got me coming around to it. I think it's a bit like Smee. It's another one of those ones where I think they can go away and learn a lot and come back with something even better next series.
Yeah, they definitely need a more durable weapon, because even when they beat hijinks, the weapon was knackered by the end of it. So there's definitely something that can be done there. But I think as far as build strength and sturdiness is concerned, they've done a pretty solid job.
The chassis is an absolute brick, like you say.
That thing took a beating in like all. It went against all spinners, which is very unfortunate for a newcomer. But they definitely proved how stocky the robot was, at least.
Speaking of bricks, I wonder what David thinks of it. Hey, see what I did there?
That's a brilliant segue.
There we go.
I'm in two minds with it, because, like, for starters, they're another offshoot from the Warhawk team, aren't they? So, insert Jevon's kind of tree here where he went down the rabbit hole too far. There is a theme where they keep whiffing their box rushes at the start of the fight. They'll just rush across and then miss the opponent and just crash into the screws and be like, oh, where am I?
All three fights it did that.
Yeah.
They're not the only ones to have done it either. Extinguisher is another one that springs to mind that's done that this series.
Yeah,
At the very least, they didn't kill themselves altogether, because that was bad for Extinguisher.
Although in their third fight against Gigabyte, it did seem to like ruin some of the drive after the first hit. Because they weren't moving the same after the beginning. Like it was all confidence and then bashed into the wall, and it's like, oh, we can't. We don't have problems turning now. This is not good. Then Gigabat came in for the kill, basically.
Yep, and then the wheels start flying off, and it's like, oh dear, this has gone south.
Yeah, so good advice is either stop the box rushes, or if you're going to do the box rushes, aim. Aim might be a good idea.
Also, the JP quote of "Don't bring wheels into the arena" after the wheel kind of rolled away.
Oh god, it's against Gigabyte.
I forgot about that.
Yep.
There was one moment that made me laugh at that, because I remember watching it live the first time. I was like, oh, it's not taking that much damage, and then I see it turns around, and the wheel's like hanging off, and like the entire side's been ripped up, and it's like, yeah, okay, maybe it's not doing as well as I thought it was.
I mean, I don't know this for certain, but as far as I can see from what I've got in front of me, the only driving experience the team captain has had so far is driving Warstop in last series. So, I think there's a couple of robots on the list of newcomers this year which have been faster or haven't quite handled in the way that the team expected them to.
Yeah, because I know.
But yeah, I think it's a process, and for a first heavyweight build, Claw Viper's got style, it's got personality, and it's got that sort of memorability factor, and durability in terms of the chassis as well. So, they've got all the makings of a really great robot going forward.
It would be nice to see them fight Copperhead next series. Get the Battle of the Snakes.
Oh no!
Yeah,
that would be good. Get them in. Now, it's funny, we're saying lots of nice things about Claw Viper, and the next robot, do I be harsh? No. I'll be kind of harsh. I mean, I'll leave it to Anson, I think he'll be the one who's the most harsh about this particular robot. Of course, it is Grabot. When people say, we've got crustacean at home, and then someone goes, oh no, we haven't even got crustacean at home. Well, here's Grabot then. Because, I mean...
Yikes.
Okay, whenever I criticise a robot, remember, I'm never talking about the team itself, I'm just looking at the robot as how I like it. This is personally my least favourite robot of the ones we're talking about. There's one that comes close, not too far near the end actually, but this one, I think, just pips it. Mainly because I don't know what it was supposed to do.
It's the ultimate free pass. If you fight this robot, you are winning. It is as simple as that.
I think both Beta and Sub-Zero got this as a free pass.
Pretty much.
The thing is, I remember when I first looked at the image, I was like, what does this robot do? I'm guessing it grabs, but that's as far as I can guess. And I wonder why the arms like that. Then I saw it spin round, and I was like, okay, but what does that do? And then it can't drive in a straight line the entire time. Like, okay, but what does it do? And I still don't know what this thing does. It gets a lot of airtime. It gets hit a lot, and it's sad to say that the most entertaining thing this ever did was when it got pushed around by Beta and then pummeled so hard its lipos died, setting on fire.
I mean, it also has a lot of TV time, surprisingly. When things like Rampage, which we'll get to, hasn't had a fight shown all the
I mean,
season
for
so
all we
far.
know, Rampage is just a figment of our imagination right now.
until the next Bounty Hunter, which hasn't aired as of recording, because they're in
Conspiracy
Yeah,
theories, we're not allowed to see it.
I mean,
The beta episode should have aired by this point, but it hadn't. For some odd reason, it still isn't out. We're not really sure why.
knowing
Reasons
Rampage,
unexplained.
knowing Rampage's look, that fight will be highlighted. But back to.
I was gonna say we're straying away from Grabot here.
And there's a reason why. I think.
I think I know what this robot is.
Go on.
It's an advert. It's
pretty much
it's a less exciting Walden Overlord in that it was built by a company who makes, robot appendages and things. I think this is right information to basically show off the product. and it's not really done a very good job of showing off the product.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not a good advertisement for this product, is it, if it doesn't work?
Because if I needed to get an arm, right, just going to say this now, if I need to get an arm and it worked as well as this robot did, I think I'd go elsewhere. Thanks, guys. Just saying.
The arm just starts smoking from lipo, like, oh, this is not good.
You'd be better off with a wooden hook hand.
Probably, yeah. I mean, also, one thing I will say about GrabBot as well, is the things that Team are holding are more interesting than the robot itself. Like, particularly what...
That sounded wrong.
Well, I forgot the image up of all like different random. Like, one's got like a pickaxe, one's got little like hammers, the grabby claws, and looks like a trophy from Techno Games. I don't know what that is, but
maybe GrabBot's their pet, and like they're part of a gang.
In that case, I think we should be all right then. If this is the gang,
I can almost see them as kind of like a gang. I can see them having sort of like the thick sort of New York accents, and one of them makes like a joke and it goes, "Yeah, good one, boss."
Shame they're from Wisconsin, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
they're New York Wisconsinians.
I do think there is a glimmer of a good idea in this robot. Maybe not a glimmer of a good BattleBot, but I think if you had a lower angle to the wedge, a more reliable drivetrain, a robot that could actually work inverted, and claws that actually survived the length of a fight, you wouldn't have a bad robot for, especially not for something like Robot Ruckus or, Robo Games if it still existed. It just, like, it's okay in concept, just in execution it has not really materialised.
it also feels like it should be the other way round. Like the wedge should be the front part of the robot, and it just. And I also I saw some comment somewhere, is like, or one time we were watching it live, someone said something along the lines of like, it's got the eyes make it look cute or something. I'm like,
on the CAD, they looked significantly better. I think that should be pointed out.
Yeah, they're just LEDs in real life.
Yeah,
that's true.
Now, you see, I'm going to say something here. You guys know me. I like original, unique ideas, but they have to either be effective or interesting to watch. And unfortunately, GrabBot is neither of those things, in my opinion. It's obviously not very good. Look at it, and it's just so boring to watch. It's a wedge with some little spinny arms on it that don't do anything. It's just dull. I'm sorry.
It's no Miss Nightshade. Is that what you're saying?
It's no Miss Nightshade. I mean, it's no Banshee. I'd have that.
No, you would.
Lego Banshee when?
Never.
One day I'm going to get him to make a Lego Banshee.
I'll give you the motors. You can build it yourself.
Well, I'm not talented enough to do that.
Right, David, if you had to choose between building a Lego Banshee or a Lego GrabBot.
Lego GrabBot any day.
Fuck you.
Wow. That's
because I think I could build it and probably make a better version. If like the arms were much more beefed up, then it could be a much better grappler and could even like try and suplex machines. Like, I feel that would be better rather than building these articulating arms which look nice but get completely trashed in the Battlebots.
Actually, the other sad thing is
that would be more.
The other sad thing is though, we haven't seen its third fight if it had one. What was that like if it didn't even air it?
It was against Rampage, and we know that they must not be shown on TV.
Of course.
I'm definitely with David on his sort of final summary point, in that I think the idea of robot arms sort of grappling and grabbing and moving things around is a fun one, but I think what they've built is too precise, too slow, and too weedy for what was needed in the battle box. Like I said, I don't hate GrabBot because I think in concept, a tanky wedge at the back and some intricate grabby arms at the front could make for something fun and entertaining. It just didn't.
For me, I think it should have been a bit more. You mentioned Crustacean earlier, like sort of that style. But then they lift as well. I think that would have been quite a cool idea. So they grab and lift, but this just didn't. Just didn't quite work, and unfortunately, because that didn't grab my attention.
Oh.
That'll stay in though, because that's worth it.
That's not bad, to be honest. That's not a bad pun.
Yes.
I mean, it's not as good a joke as Grabot's entire existence.
I like the final bit of shade on it. I like
Like father, like son on that one. Jesus Christ.
I'm more than up for seeing more of Grabot if they come back with a significantly revised design.
yeah. If they,
If not, sod off.
on that note, we'll move on to the next robot then. Which appropriately, I randomised these robots, and look what appeared at number 7. It's Jackpot.
Well, that was lucky.
It was lucky, wasn't it? Lucky number 7 indeed.
Don't you mean Sabretooth?
Can we just appreciate that this is the only robot we're talking about that went 3-0? Which is it's really impressive. Admittedly, its first fight, it was lucky, but its other 2 fights were absolutely solid, I will say.
Yeah, but
It's
they were
fun
against
fight.
easy robots. I mean, Lockjaw, that never does well. And I'm joking.
I think
I'd like to
one was
point out
Ghost
its
Raptor,
first
but-
fight wasn't lucky, it was Sub-Zero.
Yeah, like
Very
easily
easy
within the
response
series.
made.
Oh god. Oh no, I've ruined it already. Oh no. I mean,
Look, one of us was going to mention that.
yeah. And this is the
Unlucky.
robot. This is the robot that could have broken Ghost Raptor in half, and it just didn't manage it. I'm so annoyed. That's
Yeah,
what I love to-
thanks for that one on the bingo, Oliver. Appreciate it.
It almost did.
I would like to say that, yeah, Jackpot, it's by no means a perfect robot, but for a robot that was built quickly and for $4,000, for it to do as well as it had is the testament to the design, to the build process, and to the driving of this team. And it's not something we see so much in Battlebots, the more budget end of the robots spectrum, I guess. And it's maybe not as budget as something like Overdrive or Sweeney Todd from Robot Wars, but it does demonstrate that you can go to Battlebots for less money than, you know, a brand new car and come away with a very respectable set of wins.
One thing I like about Jackpot also is that it actually feels like a robot that's been here for years, and it's only the first time I've seen it. Like, it feels kind of like a very BattleBots robot. Like, it goes for the theme and just kind of runs with it. You know, something like Witch Doctor, for example, where it's kind of like,
That's
you know, I love that kind of robot.
Yeah.
That is the other thing I like about it, is they have integrated the theme pretty well into it. I think there are a couple of places they could have maybe done that a bit more, but given, as David was saying, this was originally designed with a wholly different theme, I'm all for the diamond-shaped spinners. Not only have they been effective, but also it integrates well with the robot theme.
And their self-writer is a one-arm bandit as well, which I quite like.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
It's something I've really got to respect, because, you know, how many teams have shown up this year with generic vertical spinner number 3 with randomly selected paint job and theming that has nothing to do with the way the robot actually looks.
SM94 is feeling very attacked right now.
Like, if you strip away the paint jobs from a lot of robots, I think if you've done your theming well, you can still tell what the theme of the robot is.
Yeah. I will also say this about it. I think I'm right in saying that it's the only robot that's gone 3-0 that has won all 3 of its fights via KO.
I think you're right.
I'm not knowledgeable
Which-
enough to know that, but that could be the case.
Considering some other robots in that field are Copperhead and I believe Bloodsport's one of them as well.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Bloodsport is one. Yeah, they still had to rely on the judges. This
The
one,
crack had to rely on one as well, you know.
3, the bike crack had to rely on 3 decisions to make.
That is true.
Yeah.
Seeded first, won all 3 fights via the judges.
What a
It
bike
just
crack.
doesn't work, does
Just
it?
just so reliable.
I mean, it's not been completely plain sailing. They actually broke their spinner against Sub-Zero, but
And
you know,
let's be honest, they were very lucky to beat Sub-Zero.
They were.
they were.
Um,
But every bot has new bot jitters, and the fact that they've been able to deal with that problem, it clearly hasn't hampered them since.
And let's be fair now. I know I said that as a joke earlier, but they did beat Lockjaw, which is in itself a strong competitor of BattleBots. The last 2 seasons has made the top 8 at least. I think.
Yeah, Lockjaw
Yeah.
is the 14th seed this year.
And they took out
Yeah.
Lockjaw's weapon in the first hit as well, which is
That was
and they-
very impressive.
and they broke
And
Ghost
considering-
Raptor as well. Its weapon went flying.
It was so beautiful just watching that Drisk sort of go right between Lockjaw's weapon and take out the belt. It was just, you couldn't have planned for it. It was perfect.
It was a critical
And say
hit.
what you want about Ghost Raptor, but as far as experiences are concerned, Jackpot should have lost that fight, and it just owned it. It was ridiculous.
Like it,
So-
Talking
yeah.
of, Jackpot are in the bracket. They are the 11 seed, and they are against Rotator.
an interesting opponent.
Ooh,
I-
very interesting.
I might just go for Rotator purely because I think they're a little bit more durable, possibly over time if it was over a 3 minute fight. But if Jackpot, I could see Jackpot also having a good go at it. So I'm very interested by that one.
Yeah, Rotator,
Jackpot's in the series, mate.
Rotator have become more and more armored and more efficient over the last few series. You know, dropping that other spinner module as its main configuration and getting extra armor in and the wedgelets, and it's become very clinical and clean and precise and very lean. So I don't. Yeah, and it also proved itself very durable against bots like Tombstone. So I don't see Jackpot going any further, sadly. But they've had a very good run, and I would love to see them back.
And hopefully, like next season, they go more all out with their theme. Like they start dressing like people who like work in a casino or something, or like put some fuzzy dice on it or something. You know, some kind of dumb things like that. I'd love to see more add to the theme, even just make it even more so. Because
Oh my goodness, a fuzzy dice mini bot, please.
I'm just
yes.
imagining it wins via entanglement from the fuzzy dice.
I want to see one of them just look like Mr. Green. You know, the casino. Have you guys seen the casino?
yeah, I've seen
advert,
Mr. Green. Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, the robots.
That's who I moonlight as. You know, just saying. So.
A full body spinner mini bot that's designed like a roulette wheel.
Ooh, nice.
13 Black wants to know your location.
Uh-oh.
It is like the love child of 13 Black and Death Roll, isn't it?
It kind of is.
Yeah.
I mean, Death Roll's
Yeah.
not here, so it's kind of the spiritual successor in some ways.
Death Roll at home, but the Death Roll at home is actually pretty decent.
Just more gambly and less Australian.
And so an improvement in every way.
One extra thing for Jackpot. Wasn't Jeff meant to be on the Malice team as well for 2020 Battlebots? Like, I'm sure he was meant to be on the team originally and then split off to build Jackpot.
They were spending too much money on Alice. You're like, nah, this is not
Of course. He's gambled it all on Jack.
And so far, the gamble's paying off.
That's how he got Jackpot. He actually won it on the fruit machines.
Yeah, Malice and Jackpot actually cost the same amount to build. It's just that Jeff and the team gambled away most of the funds and only had $4,000 left to spend on the robot.
That is exactly what happened, yes. Now we're also going on to a robot who I believe was made by the Shreddit Bro team, I believe, or at least the captain of this team. It's Pain Train. Actually, admittedly, just off the bat, I love the name Pain Train. Unfortunately, it doesn't live up too much to the name. I mean, most of the pain was delivered to itself.
Like a train for a start, and it doesn't cause much pain either.
No, it has a train on it, but that's as far as it goes. By the theming.
Yeah,
Admittedly, I think just looking at the robot, like if I just looked at it without any other context, I don't mind it design-wise. I know some people have said it looks a bit like just bits of armor just slapped together, but I don't know. The design's okay, but when I saw it actually battling, it has a massive problem with like rocking back and forth on its axis. Like it can barely drive half the time.
yeah. People have called this like a heavyweight Shreddit Bro, but I can't really agree with it. Like, as far as I know, this team up to this point have only built these sort of Beetles and things, and a lot of those Beetles have been kits or bots built from kit type parts. I know Shreddit Bro, I believe it's a Weta kit or something like that. There are so many different kits I don't really know, but it's got like the fingertech bar and it's very generic, and there are a lot of them. And the reason why it does so well is because it is pretty well driven. And I think in the same way as the Perfect Phoenix team is the Shreddit Bro team up until now have largely been known for their driving, not necessarily the interesting robots that they've built. And I really, really respect them for going out and building their own heavyweight and designing it. But like James is saying, there's really two main flaws: that it rocks back and forth and has a ton of ground clearance because of that, and that the reach of the weapon is fairly pitiful.
Also, I hate to sound like I'm really critical of their build strengths here, but Smee bumped into it and that weapon broke off. I'm sorry. Like when a weapon is designed to come into contact with something else, and when it does that, it then breaks, you kind of need to reevaluate how well you've built it.
I mean, these are first robot problems, I'm guessing.
Yeah. For sure. Equally, it did break off one of Smee's weapons, but I do agree, Anderson, in the sense that it is a first heavyweight. You sometimes make mistakes in the way that you build things, or you think a certain thing's going to work and it actually won't, or you try something new and different. And yeah, I think the weapon definitely needed strengthening. It shouldn't do that, or at least the mounting needs better protection. But I hope it's something that they learn from going forward.
Tell you what, it's great to have educational videos from Oliver, isn't it? Remember, kids, your weapon should not fall off in combat.
See that? Don't do that.
In which case, it's the whole point of your weapon is to detach from your robot.
You see, you could watch the RoboCast. What people who actually been on the show have made these heavyweights. Whatever. But you can get advice like that. That's proper. Make sure does your robot drive? No, not well. Does the robot's weapon stay on? If it's not against a long robot, then kind of. Then yes, your robot is okay. But no, I actually think I could see Pain Train coming back with a bit more of a refined design, because at least the flaws in their design was very obvious. At least it wasn't like it took them like 2 or 3 fights to notice this. Like literally in the first fight against Slammo, all the problems were already there, apart from the weapon falling off.
Yeah, and I know it may be one. I don't really remember whether or not they were in the initial selection. I don't think they were, but if it was built on a smaller timescale, it is easier to overlook things like the stability of the robot and the exact mountings of the weapons and things in favor of actually getting the robot built and done. So I don't hold anything against the team for overlooking those things, but also I do think it is one of the newcomers that have had the least impressive performances relative to the hype that went into the robot, and I think it might be one of those ones which, unless they do something really interesting and really upgrade it next year, it's something that's generic enough that the producers might overlook it in favor of an Orion or a Monsoon or a Death Roll or something else from overseas.
Yeah,
I think it was one of the very last robots, actually. I'm certain it wasn't an original selection, and they were building it during one of the Norwalk events in the background.
Oh, really?
So, right, okay.
Yeah, wow. It was really up against it with this one.
It definitely shows, but again, if they do improve on the design, I'm glad to see this team coming back. I'd love to see him come back with it, because the weapon does have potential for damage. Again, it did damage to Smee, and it sort of to me suffers from what I call Atom 94 issues, where it's got a good weapon on a really bad base, which the weapon itself is fine, but except when it's on the robot, but the rest of the robot kind of lets it down in a way. Which...
Yeah, I think it is worth pointing out the strength, like you say, and it did leave some pretty big scuff marks on the front of Slammo. So I think there is a lot to be said for the power that is in the weapon. Just some tweaks here and there are needed.
I want it to look like a train.
Hopefully next year they make it more like a train. Go all out with the theme again. Again, it's obviously
needs like a smoke machine that's not a lipo battery.
It needs the world's largest vape to be sticking out the top of the robot, and that would be awesome.
Again, I think there's a lot you can do with like a train theme, but they just haven't.
Now, I will say this robot is one I think out of all the newcomers has the greatest chance of improving itself if they appear next time. And that's the hard to spell but easy to say Axolotl. I like this thing quite a lot.
No-headed death Flaspingo. There we go.
Can we just call
I
it
like that.
Spinamingo? Was that easier?
Spingo would be fine for me.
Spingo, yeah.
Admittedly, Spingo does sound like an insult. So yeah, Axolotl, this has, I think it's one of the biggest potentials, and I feel bad because this team definitely, it shows this team had very little time to make this robot. I think it was like 4 weeks, something like that, if that.
It says on the website the team literally formed a month before filming.
Yeah.
And I've actually been lucky enough to be able to speak to Alon, the team captain. And basically, the robot was designed over the course of about 2 or 3 days and sort of finalised the CAD in 5 hours. And they were on the Facebook to Greg Munson, sort of messaging him back and forth with ideas for what they were doing.
Oh, wow.
Literally sort of conferring with him as they were designing it. To say, oh, here's what we've got, and he's like, well, maybe, and then they went away and did something else, and eventually managed to get in. So yeah, very very last minute robot build, but like you say, James, a lot of potential. I think
there's a lot of good stuff. Like their bounty hunters appearance also showed quite a lot. 'Cause they had that little really low kind of like wedge on the bottom of the panel to help stop. Because they one issue they seem to have in a lot of their fights is that a lot of robots could take the weapon out very easily because it was decently powerful, but the rest of the robot couldn't handle it. So it would get a few hits, and like it did against Ribbot, and it would just sort of hit a few times, and it would just die, like in 2 seconds. Which again is partially obviously due to the very little time they had to make this robot. Which I still think that's very impressive, though. They managed to make a robot, especially in this very tough time at the moment, made a robot in basically a month. From CAD to actual robot, and they brought it over, and they fought, and there's a lot of potential here. Honestly, you can't really blame them for any of it, really.
No, exactly, and I think it's interesting in that it's a vert that puts the wedge first, which has caused trouble for things like Witch Doctor and things in the past, in 2018, when they sort of couldn't get the weapon to engage. But the idea of, I think in concept, if you can get the robot low enough, the idea that your wedge darts are already underneath the robot, so it's automatically going to the spinner and going to be sent upwards, rather than that 50-50 gamble of, which robot's going to go flying when sort of 2 vertical weapons engage. I think in concept they've got a really strong idea here if they can pull it off and make it work. Just the robot has to be low enough.
And this team has the best line of stickers ever. Just saying.
They have plushies as well.
Oh,
they have a proper plushie axolotl as well.
Oh, well, I think I know what I'm getting. I know what I'm doing after recording. Get myself one of those boys. I think this robot again. It's definitely the biggest victim of the limited amount of time. I'd say out of a lot of these robots, maybe Rampage as well, or Aegis, but they've made a robot which it functioned. It got into Battlebots, and I believe as we speak, they're already making designs for the next one. So
they are, yeah.
Which is, and from what I've seen of it. It looks pretty. It looks a little bit better already, because obviously they have more time to look over it and stuff and look at the flaws they had of it. So I really hope these guys make it in again, because there's plenty of room to improve here. Even if you don't get another win next season either, I'd rather see them come back and improve than just be a one season wonder, I guess.
Like, I'd rather look at this than Perfect Phoenix, for example. Like, there's a nice colour going on with this rather than just generic black and red.
We need more pink robots. Is that what? We need more pink robots.
I'm turning into Ryan here. It's manifesto,
It just works. The whole robot just kind of works. And in my weird aesthetic, I quite like the look. I like where it's going, but I can't wait to see how it'll get better. Essentially,
for sure. It's definitely. I think it's one of the ones that definitely deserved better this year.
If it was maybe made in the first wave rather than the second wave, this thing could have been a little bit better already.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But now we'll move on to a robot that's obviously had so much screen time. It's unbelievable. It's Black Widow. Black Widow is unfortunate, as on the one hand I can kind of see why they maybe didn't show a lot of their fights because it does have a very old school garage build, Series 4 of Robot Wars look. I mean, you got the pipe cleaner legs, essentially. This big, bulky body with this very, very tiny weapon on it, compared to the rest of the robot. At the same time, though, I do find it endearing, admittedly. Like, I don't mind seeing these kind of robots, but I just felt bad they never got a single one of their fights aired. And all we've seen of them is one fight in Bounty Hunters, and they got pushed around for the entire fight.
They did get one fight, but it wasn't aired on Battlebots. It was aired on some other show to promote Battlebots. It was Mammoth.
Really?
Yeah, Mammoth. Yeah, it wasn't a proper undercard fight, which is an exhibition fight.
Oh, that sounds like a fun fight, that.
I
Mammoth
think the
and
top
Black
got
Widow.
broken on it, didn't it, in that fight?
Yeah,
Mammoth
Mammoth managed
it.
to literally decapitate the. Well, I guess decapitate's the wrong word because it isn't really the head, but the top of the robot just managed to throw it off. Very impressive to see.
Yeah, considering Mammoth's weapon isn't mainly designed to damage, it's more designed to like push away and lift. That says something.
Yeah.
The quality of the Black Widow build. Also, Black Widow is up there as one of the most overused names for robots ever.
I mean, there's a Robot Wars robot called Black Widow, the Walker from Series 5.
Yeah, it's almost disappointing this isn't a Walker, really.
And it doesn't
It's like
help.
Also, there was also a lightweight in classic Battlebots called Black Widow, and a robot in Robot Wars Extreme Warriors called Black Widow as well. So that's 4 I can think of off the top of my head.
It doesn't
What you're
help.
saying is it's the King's Arms of pub names.
Yes, yeah, it's what the red line is to pubs.
I mean, it doesn't help. There's also Black Dragon as well in the same series, which also probably doesn't help. I mean, obviously, people more like to remember Black Dragon, but still, the fact there's 2 robots with black as the first word is kind of annoying.
And I think that's overall one of the things that works against this robot is that, you know, like you say, there's a Black Dragon in this series and the Black Widow, so there's a more memorable Black Dragon, more memorable robot with that first word in. And then even in the application phase, for those of us who are BattleBot supporters, there was a robot revealed called Gloomweaver, which was going to be a full articulated leg walking spider thing that sadly had to pull out because of COVID.
Hopefully next year.
So, you know, even at that early stage, it was the lesser of the 2 spider robots. Is that really fair on it? I don't know, because it's clearly a very it's clearly like a shed build. It's clearly not a particularly high budget or high skill build. I imagine that the main chassis is recycled, and the teeth are just straight up bolted onto their drum. It wasn't sort of manufactured as such. So it is nice to see a sort of more recycled build getting in, and I think they knew going in that they weren't going to do very well, so they made it look like a spider and gave it a silly string dispenser at the back. They've clearly got a sense of humour, and I can't hate them for it.
Oh no, I don't hate
no,
the robot.
no.
I think
I don't dislike the robot at all.
I mean, my only issue with it is that it's both forgettable and memorable at the same time, and I can't really describe how that's the case. It does everything.
I'd like it more if we saw more of it, basically.
It did have an unaired fight against Rampage, which apparently was all right, but we never saw it. So
I think that's fair. I think if you put it in against another really memorable robot, like say Kraken, I think it would create for some really memorable moments by virtue of some of the things that the robot does, but also some of the things that are done to it by another entertaining robot.
I mean, sadly, the only time we saw this thing was in that Bounty Hunters episode against Scorpios, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the entire fight was just Scorpios pushing it around, and some occasional sparks when the weapon briefly hit each other. And
yeah, mechanically speaking, there aren't really any redeeming qualities. I mean, I think they literally used just like a piece of wood shoved into the wrong side of the weapon as their weapon.
Yeah, I was going to say they put it in the wrong bit, so if it just spun up, it would just throw the wooden block out instead.
Yeah.
Turned one dangerous weapon into 2 dangerous weapons. Well done, lads.
Multi-purpose weaponry,
It's like I feel bad for this team, like not even get. I think it's a kick in the teeth in this season, where the conditions to get to the conditions to get to BattleBots were harder, and they still didn't air any of your fights. To me, that's kind of a bit unfair. I think should at least air one of them. just for the fact that people took their time and effort to get here during a very hard time. And
Yeah.
I feel like a little bit unfair, but at least we saw the bounty hunters for a fight. But it was quite funny in, like, I think it was episode 9 where they showed Rampage and Black Widow briefly, and they basically got a participation medal rather than a fight. It's like, these teams also appeared. Anyway, main event. And it's like, oh, okay. I mean, at least Deadlift got a fight on air. Kind of. These things didn't get anything.
Got a couple of highlights appear for it.
Yeah, and also they appeared in the audience more than they did in the actual robot. So, there's that. But unfortunately, I don't have much to say about Black Widow aside from that, really. It's just because we didn't see it very often. And we didn't even see the team in the audience at all. Barely, so
No.
they didn't make any guest appearances, so... Yeah, it's just a kind of a sad case. I mean, if they came back again with a slightly better robot or something, I don't see them getting in if they tried entering a similar thing next time. With a lot of competition for robots like, Monsoon and stuff like that, who want to re-enter. And, of course, the Chad, which is Winston Churchill, hopefully might be making an appearance, but...
I think Rusty may have stolen this robot's thunder.
Yeah.
For, like, the garage build.
The endearing budget build.
In terms of budget build and recycled parts, like you say, David, there are robots even this series that are doing it better than Black Widow. Another series they might have had more of a chance of sort of winning over people's hearts, but
yeah, it was a bit of an
sadly
outclassed in this season.
not to be.
Yes. But Josh, also a very important thing I must say as well is that a lot of people are complaining about Hypershock being in the top 32. We already have Hypershock here. We got Warers. I'm not saying it how they're supposed to say it because it's stupid. Juarez.
Yeah.
And I'm purposely pronouncing it wrong because I know somebody in the comments will hate me for it. I don't care. I'm going to say it properly. War-EZ. War-EZ. That's its name.
Oh yeah, because we're not American.
No. Makes no sense if you're British.
Now, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to go listen to some ZZ Top. Be right back.
But War-EZ, man.
To make another musical reference, this robot is asking a question. It's asking a question. It's saying, war? Easy. But I think they got the answer wrong. War? What is it good for? As we all know, the answer is absolutely nothing.
Also, the team have learned the hard way against Fusion that war is not easy because you get thrown out of the arena, almost out of the arena with one wheel missing.
I can understand why they didn't name it that, Oliver, because I don't think the applicant's name section on the form was long enough for them to put it in, so they just thought we put it in there instead.
If you can have
So
Smee,
that's why Mingo doesn't make it to Battlebots. The name's too long.
Yeah.
I think Smee would like to ask you a few questions about long names.
Well, that's why it's only that amount of ease, because they ran out of space on the document.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
we cracked the code.
When we applied, it only had 3 E's in the name.
Also, it's showing you how much we care about War-EZ when we're not even talking about the robot. Yeah.
It's hard to say things about it other than
It's
red
Red
Hypershock.
Yeah.
It's fucking massive.
Oh yeah, this thing is huge. I mean, in its fight against Fusion, I couldn't tell if Fusion was just really tiny or War-EZ is just incredibly massive.
Huge is not a newcomer.
What was that, sorry?
You said this thing is huge. Huge is not a newcomer.
Oh, that's terrible.
I didn't even rise for that one.
Right.
It's funny actually.
War-EZ, right? Okay. In the words of many actresses from particular online videos, it's just so fucking big.
I mean, this thing is. Lest we forget, this thing is 1 and 2 because it fought Axolotl at some point, whose wheel just ejected itself out of its body in the pure brillianceness that was War-EZ. But yeah, I mean, there's really. I feel bad because there's nothing I can really say about War-EZ. It's just red. It is just red Hypershock.
And I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing. It just is no Hypershock. It can't really self-right. It can't really run inverted that we can tell.
Nope.
And it's not using its space very economically because it is so big. It needs to be a lot more compact. And as we saw in the Fusion fight, it meant that its weapon could hardly even engage.
Yeah, because there's a bit in the Fusion fight where it had a good opportunity because Fusion was stuck in the floor and they could easily just run into them and get a hit. And they didn't really make contact They got a few sparks, but it didn't really do anything. and then they happened to turn into Fusion's weapon at the wrong moment, and then got yeeted halfway across the arena, which says more about Fusion than it does about War Easy, to be honest with you. But also, to even make it sadder, they had the same win-loss ratio as Hypershock in this season as well. So they're basically our budget Hypershock, even more so.
I wouldn't be particularly sad if we never saw this robot again after this series, unless they return with a redesign of this robot and call it War Difficult.
War instructions are clear.
By redesign, I think what you mean is they should give it another color scheme, maybe like a bright neon yellow. I think that would be quite nice. Maybe give it a more beefier spinner rather than a bar. I think that would be quite nice as well. Maybe a better front plow as well. You know.
Well, it does look like they've taken the wedgelets off of Whiplash for the front, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and we know how well those survive in previous years.
It's funny.
That's as much as I can say about
We
War
haven't
Easy.
even mentioned the fact that the name is a pun. Not a very good pun.
No.
It's probably worse than some of the puns that we've made tonight.
Yeah.
It probably doesn't help. It's not
Sad,
a
isn't
very
it?
it's not a very interesting pun either. It's literally just taking their name and just slightly mispronouncing it, and you're done. That's your robot. It'd be like, oh, what's the new Tombstone robot called? Oh, it's Ray Berlings. Close enough. That's the new Tombstone. All right, cool. Ray Berlings.
That's what Balespear did. Bale, yeah.
They're called Farmageddon. Come on, get it right.
Yeah.
That's what they're really called. So yeah, that was War Easy.